Welcome to Thrones Rewritten. Today, we're diving into an epic Game of Thrones what-if tale that reimagines a world where one crucial moment changes everything. Picture Ned Stark facing the axe in King's Landing, but what if he survives? Join us as we explore a gripping story of honor, rebellion, and the unyielding strength of House Stark, packed with battles, betrayals, and heart-pounding reunions. If you love Westeros and crave fresh twists, hit that subscribe button and let's rewrite history together. The axe gleamed in the sunlight, its edge honed to a cruel whisper. Eddard Stark knelt on the steps of the great Sept of Baelor, his head bowed, his hands bound. The crowd roared, a tide of voices baying for blood. His blood. Above them all, Joffrey Baratheon stood, golden hair catching the light, his sneer sharper than the blade. Ned's confession, forced from his lips to protect his daughters, still tasted like ash. He had betrayed his honor, his king, his friend Robert, all to save Sansa and Arya. And yet, as the executioner raised the axe, Ned felt a cold certainty. His death would not end this game. "Sir Ilyn, bring me his head!" Joffrey's voice cut through the din, high and petulant. The crowd surged, their cheers a deafening wave. Ned closed his eyes thinking of Winterfell, of Catelyn, Robb, Bran, Rickon, and the girls. He thought of Jon, far away at the wall. "Forgive me," he whispered to them in his heart. But the axe did not fall. A horn blared, sharp and urgent, slicing through the clamor. The crowd faltered, their bloodlust stumbling into confusion. Ned's eyes snapped open. Hooves thundered, and shouts rose from the edges of the square. Through the haze of dust and bodies he glimpsed banners, black and yellow, a crowned stag. Baratheon. "Hold!" a voice bellowed, deep and commanding. "By order of the king's brother, stay that blade." Sir Ilyn Payne hesitated, his axe still poised. Joffrey's face twisted, red with fury. "Who dares the—" Renly Baratheon rode into view, his armor gleaming green and gold, a host of Stormlanders at his back. Beside him, Loras Tyrell sat tall on his white mare, hand on his sword. The crowd parted, awed or terrified, as Renly's men fanned out, their presence a wall between Ned and the executioner. "Lord Stark is a traitor," Joffrey shrieked. "He confessed. I am the king." "You're a boy," Renly said coolly, dismounting. His eyes swept the scene. Ned, bloodied but alive. Cersei, pale and rigid. Sansa, sobbing in the royal box. And a king does not murder his hand on a whim. Cersei stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Lord Stark admitted to treason, Lord Renly. The sentence is just period." "Just?" Renly's smile was a blade. "The realm will decide what is just, not a child's tantrum. Stand down, Sir Ilyn." The executioner looked to Joffrey, then Cersei. The queen's jaw tightened, but she gave a curt nod. Sir Ilyn lowered the axe. Ned exhaled, his heart pounding. He was alive, for now. Renly's men cut Ned's bonds and hauled him to his feet. "This is not over," Joffrey spat, his voice trembling with rage. "You defy your king." "My king is dead," Renly said, loud enough for all to hear. "Robert lies cold, and I will not see his realm torn apart by folly. Lord Stark comes with me." Ned staggered as they led him away, Renly's arm steadying him. The crowd muttered, some jeering, others whispering. Sansa's cries echoed in his ears, but he could not look back. Arya, he prayed, was safe. Hidden by Yoren, perhaps already fleeing. As they passed through the city gates, Ned's mind raced. He was free, but at what cost? The game had shifted, and the board was bloodier than ever. The camp sprawled along the Rose Road, a sea of tents beneath the Baratheon stag. Ned sat in Renly's pavilion, a cup of wine untouched in his hand. His wounds had been cleaned, his stark gray doublet replaced with plain wool. He felt like a ghost caught between worlds. Winterfell was a distant dream, King's Landing a nightmare. Renly lounged across from him, his charm undimmed by the day's chaos. "You're a hard man to kill, Lord Stark," he said, sipping his wine. "I'd wager the gods aren't done with you yet." "I owe you my life," Ned said gruffly. "But why? You gain nothing by saving a disgraced lord." Renly's smile faded. "I gain the North, perhaps. Or at least its honor. Joffrey's madness will burn the realm to ashes, and I need men like you, men the people trust." Ned's eyes narrowed. "You mean to claim the throne?" "I do." Renly leaned forward, his voice earnest. Robert was no saint, but he held the kingdoms together. Joffrey is a monster, and Cersei's spawn have no right to the crown. I am Robert's heir, Ned. Help me, and we can end this madness." Ned's jaw tightened. "Stannis is Robert's true heir. You know this." Renly waved a hand. "Stannis is iron, unbending and unloved. The lords won't follow him. They'll follow me, and the Tyrells with their gold and armies." Ned said nothing. Renly's ambition was plain, but his rescue had bought Ned time to protect his family, to warn Robb, to find Arya. He thought of Jon, too, and the secret he carried. Lyanna's son. If Renly knew, or Stannis, no. That truth was a blade too sharp to wield now. "I'll not swear to you," Ned said at last. "Not yet. My daughters are still in King's Landing, and my son marches south. My place is with them." Renly studied him, then nodded. "Fair enough. Ride with me to Storm's End. From there you can send word to Robb. Plan your next move. Joffrey won't touch Sansa while Cersei fears my reprisal." Ned had little choice. Agreed. The journey to Storm's End was long, the roads thick with autumn mud. Ned rode in silence, his thoughts a tangle of guilt and resolve. He had failed Robert, failed the realm, but he would not fail his children. At night he dreamed of Winterfell, of Catelyn's laugh, Bran's climbing, Rickon's toddling steps. He dreamed of Arya, fierce and free, and Sansa caught in a golden cage. Each dawn he woke to the weight of survival. Loras Tyrell rode often at Renly's side, their closeness plain. Ned saw the whispers among the men, but he cared not. Loras was a skilled knight, and his loyalty to Renly strengthened their cause. Margaery Tyrell joined them at Highgarden, her beauty and grace a mirror to Renly's charm. She greeted Ned with warmth, her eyes sharp with calculation. "Lord Stark," she said, her voice like honey, "the North is dear to us. Your strength will be our shield." Ned bowed stiffly. "My strength is my family, Lady Margaery. I fight for them." Her smile never wavered. "As do we all." At Storm's End, the castle loomed like a fist against the sea. Renly declared himself king before his bannermen, his crown a circlet of golden antlers. Ned stood apart, watching the lords cheer. He felt the pull of duty, to Robb, to Sansa, to the north, but also to truth. Stannis lingered in his mind, a shadow of law and right. That night Ned penned a letter to Robb, sealed with the direwolf. "Stay strong, my son. Trust your bannermen, but guard your heart. I live, and I will come to you." He sent it north with a trusted rider, praying it would reach River Run. Another letter went to the wall to Jon, though Ned dared not write the truth. "Serve with honor, lad," the North remembers. Word of Ned's survival spread like wildfire, fanned by Renly's messengers. In the north, Robb Stark sat in River Run's great hall, his direwolf Grey Wind at his side. The letter trembled in his hands. "Father lives." The words blurred through tears he would not shed before his lords. "He's with Renly," Robb said, his voice steady despite the storm within. "Joffrey tried to kill him, but he's free." The great Jon roared, slamming his fist on the table. "The North endures! Let's march south and gut that bastard king." Murmurs rose, some eager, others wary. Catelyn, seated near Robb, gripped his arm. "Ned lives, but Sansa and Arya are still in danger. We must tread carefully." Robb nodded, his mind racing. At 16 he bore the weight of a kingdom. His bannermen had named him king in the north, but victory was far from certain. The Lannisters held the Riverlands in a chokehold, and Tywin's armies were a blade at their backs. "Renly offers alliance," Robb said, reading the second missive sent by Renly's hand. "He seeks to overthrow Joffrey and claim the throne." "Renly's a peacock," Rose Bolton said, his pale eyes unreadable. "Stannis is the rightful heir if we care for law." "Law?" Sir Brynden Tully scoffed. "Joffrey's no true king, and Cersei's brood are bastards. Renly has the Tyrells, gold, men, grain. Stannis has nothing but Dragonstone's rocks." Robb looked to his mother. Catelyn's face was lined with worry, but her voice was firm. "Renly saved your father, Robb. That buys him trust for now, but we fight for the North, not his crown." Robb stood, his decision made. "We'll treat with Renly, but I'll not bend the knee." The North is free, and my father's life is my charge. Send word to Storm's End. I'll meet Lord Stark and Renly, but on my terms." The hall erupted in cheers, though Robb felt no triumph. He was a king, but also a son, and the road south was paved with blood. In King's Landing, Sansa Stark knelt in her chambers praying to the Seven for her father's life. The news of Ned's escape had reached the Red Keep, whispered by servants and guards. Joffrey's rage shook the court, vices shattered, courtiers cowered, and even Cersei's calm frayed at the edges. Sansa's relief was a fragile thing, chained to fear. She was still a hostage, her every move watched. Joffrey summoned her to the throne room, his eyes glittering with malice. "Your traitor father lives," he sneered, lounging on the Iron Throne. "But you'll pay for his crimes, Lady Sansa." She curtsied, her heart pounding. "Please, your grace, I am loyal—" "Loyal?" Joffrey laughed, a cruel sound. "You're a Stark, and Starks are wolves. Sir Meryn, show her loyalty." The blow came swift, a gauntleted hand across her face. Sansa stumbled, tasting blood, but she did not cry. "I am a Stark," she thought, clinging to her father's strength. "I will endure." Cersei watched from beside the throne, her face a mask. "Enough, Joffrey," she said, her voice tight. "We need her alive." Joffrey pouted, but waved Sir Meryn back. Sansa straightened, her eyes meeting Cersei's. For a moment she saw something. Fear, perhaps, or a calculation. Renly's defiance had shaken the Lannisters, and Ned's survival was a crack in their armor. That night Sansa dreamed of Winterfell, of Arya's laughter, and Robb's steady hand. She woke to darkness, but hope flickered, faint as a candle. "Father lives," she thought, "and I will be free." At Storm's End, Ned trained in the yard, his body stiff but stubborn. Ice, his great sword, had been lost in King's Landing, but Renly gifted him a fine blade. Each swing was a reminder. He was alive, and his fight was not over. Renly's court buzzed with plans, alliances, sieges, crowns. Ned listened but spoke little, his thoughts on his children. Word came that Robb had been named king in the north, and pride warred with fear in Ned's heart. He's too young, he thought, but he's a Stark. One evening a rider arrived, rain-soaked and weary. "Lord Stark," he said, bowing low, "a message from River Run." Ned tore open the scroll, his breath catching. Robb's hand was bold, his words clear. "I come south, father. We'll meet at the Stormland's edge. The north marches with me." Renly read over Ned's shoulder, his smile sharp. "Your son's bold, a king already and barely a man. Will he kneel to me?" Ned's eyes were steel. "Robb kneels to no one but his conscience. As do I." Renly laughed, but there was tension in it. "Then let's hope our conscience align, Lord Stark." That night Ned stood on Storm's End's ramparts, the sea crashing below. The game had changed, but its stakes were the same. Family, honor, survival. He thought of Sansa, trapped in a den of lions, of Arya, lost or hidden, of Robb, a king with a boy's heart. And he thought of Jon, bound by oaths Ned could not break. "I'm coming," he whispered to the wind. "Hold fast, my wolves." The rain fell in sheets, turning the Stormland's roads to rivers of mud. Eddard Stark rode at the head of Renly Baratheon's vanguard, his borrowed cloak heavy with water. The sword at his hip felt wrong, too light, too new, but it was a blade, and he would wield it for his family. Word had come that Robb Stark, king in the north, marched south with his bannermen, and Ned's heart thrummed with pride and dread. His son was coming, but so was war. Renly's camp sprawled across a wooded ridge, tents bright with Tyrell and Baratheon colors. Ned dismounted, his boots sinking into the mire. Loras Tyrell greeted him with a nod, his armor gleaming despite the gloom. "Lord Stark, a rider brings news. Your son's host is 2 days hence, near Bronzegate." Ned's chest tightened. "And his strength?" 20,000, perhaps more, Northmen, Riverlords, and Tully men. Loras's voice held respect. "Your son fights well, they say." "The young wolf?" Ned allowed himself a grim smile. "He's a Stark." Inside Renly's pavilion, the air was thick with wine and ambition. Renly stood over a map, Marguerite Tyrell at his side, her presence a quiet force. Lords Florent, Tarly, and others crowded the table, their voices a tangle of strategy and pride. Ned entered, and the room stilled. Lord Stark, Renly said, his smile warm but sharp. Your son approaches. A king, they call him. Will he treat with me as one? Ned met his gaze. Robb fights for the North and his kin. He'll hear you, but he bends to no man's crown. Renly's eyes flickered, but he nodded. Then let us meet as allies, not rivals. Joffrey's the foe, and Tywin Lannister's armies choke the Riverlands. Together we can crush them. Ned studied the map. King's Landing a red stain, River Run a beleaguered blue, Storm's End a defiant green. Tywin's no fool, he said. He'll strike before we unite, and Stannis... He trailed off, the shadow of Robert's true heir heavy in his mind. Stannis skulks on Dragonstone, Renly said, waving a hand. He has no men, no gold. Let him brood. Ned said nothing. Stannis was iron, unyielding, and the truth of Joffrey's parentage burned in Ned's memory. He had kept that secret to protect his daughters, but it gnawed at him. If Renly fell or Robb faltered, Stannis might be the realm's last hope, or its doom. That night Ned wrote to Sansa, though he knew the letter might never reach her. Hold fast, my girl. You're a Stark, and we are coming. He sealed it with wax, the direwolf crude but fierce. Another letter went north, to Jon at the Wall. The Night's Watch is your duty, lad, but know you are in my heart. He dared not write more, not with Lyanna's secret a blade at his throat. Sleep eluded him. He stood outside, rain on his face, and thought of Arya. Yoren had spirited her from King's Landing, he hoped, but no word had come. Run, little wolf, he prayed. Run and live. Robb Stark rode through the dusk, grey wind loping at his side. His host stretched behind him, Northmen in furs, river lords in mail, banners snapping in the wind, Umber, Karstark, Mormont, Tully. Their loyalty was his strength, but also his burden. At 16 he was a king, crowned by his men's faith, yet every step south felt like a step toward his father. River Run's fall to Jaime Lannister had been a blow, but Robb's victories at the Whispering Wood and the camps had broken the Lannister grip. Now, with Ned alive, hope burned brighter. Catelyn rode near him, her face etched with worry but unbowed. Your father's with Renly, she said, her voice low. We must trust him, but Renly's ambition is a storm of its own. Robb nodded, his jaw tight. I'll not kneel, mother. The North is free. Catelyn's eyes softened. I know, but freedom comes at a cost. Tywin Lannister won't yield, and Renly's promises may outshine his deeds. The Grachan, riding nearby, overheard and laughed. Let Renly prance! We'll carve our own path with Lord Stark at our side. Robb wished he shared the Greyjohn's fire. At night he dreamed of Sansa, weeping in King's Landing, and Arya lost in the wild. He dreamed of Bran and Rickon left in Winterfell's care. Each dawn he woke to war. Scouts brought word of Tywin's movements, his armies regrouping at Harrenhal, probing the Riverland's edges. Robb sent Blackfish Brynden to harry their flanks, but his eyes were south. We meet father at Bronzegate, he told his lords. From there we plan our strike. Rose Bolton's pale gaze lingered. Renly's Tyrells bring numbers, your grace, but numbers break against cunning. Tywin will not wait for us to join hands. Robb's hand rested on his sword. Then we'll be ready. At Bronzegate the land opened into rolling hills, the castle a squat shadow against the sky. Renly's host glittered, knights in polished armor, banners of rose and stag. Robb's men, grim and mud-stained, formed ranks. Greywind growled, sensing the tension. Ned emerged from Renly's lines, his face weathered but unbroken. Robb dismounted, his heart lurching. Father, he said, voice catching. Ned clasped him, strong and real. Robb, my son. The embrace was brief, but it anchored them both. Catelyn joined them, tears in her eyes. Ned, she whispered, and he held her too as the armies watched. Renly approached, his smile a courtier's mask. King Robb, he said, bowing slightly, the Stormlands welcome you. Robb returned the nod, a wary. Lord Renly, I thank you for my father's life. Then let us talk of alliance, Renly said, gesturing to his pavilion. Joffrey's doom awaits. Inside, the air was warm, the table laden with maps and wine. Marjorie Tyrell greeted Robb with grace, her eyes assessing. Your victories are the talk of the realm, your grace, she said. The young wolf is a name well earned. Robb inclined his head, but his focus was Ned. Father, what of Sansa? Arya? Ned's face darkened. Sansa's still in King's Landing, a hostage. Arya, I pray she's free, but I've no word. Robb's fists clenched. We'll free Sansa and find Arya. Renly leaned forward. Join me, Robb. My Tyrells and your Northmen can take the capital. Joffrey will fall, and Sansa will be yours. And the throne? Robb asked, his voice steady. Renly's smile didn't falter. Mine, by right, but the North will have its place. Honored. Free. Ned's silence was loud. Robb met his father's eyes, seeing the same doubt. We'll fight Joffrey, Robb said at last, but the North kneels to no one. Renly's jaw tightened, but he nodded. So be it. We march together, for now. Sansa Stark knelt in the Red Keep sept, her prayers a whisper. The candles flickered, their light of frail comfort. News of her father's survival had reached her, smuggled by a kind-eyed maid. Ned lived, and Robb marched south. Hope was a dangerous thing, but she clung to it. Joffrey's court was a viper's nest. The king's temper grew wilder, his cruelty sharper. At a feast, he'd forced Sansa to sing for the court, mocking her as the traitor's daughter. She'd sung, her voice steady though her hands trembled. I am a Stark, she told herself. I will not break. Cersei watched her closely, her smiles cold. You are wiser than your father, Sansa, she said once, pouring wine. He thought honor could shield him. You know better. Sansa curtsied, hiding her fear. I only wish to please your grace. But she watched too. The court whispered of Renly's rebellion, of Robb's victories, of Stannis stirring on Dragonstone. Tyrion Lannister, newly arrived as Hand, was a puzzle. Sharp-tongued, yet kinder than his kin. He'd stopped Joffrey's beatings once, his eyes meeting Sansa's with something like pity. One night, a note slipped under her door, scrawled in a rough hand. Your sister lives. Be ready. Sansa's breath caught. Arya? Alive? She burned the note, her heart racing. She didn't know who sent it, but it was a spark in the dark. Joffrey summoned her the next day, his mood foul. Your brother calls himself a king, he spat, pacing the throne room, and your father crawls to Renly like a dog. What do you say to that, Lady Sansa? She lowered her eyes, her voice soft. I pray for peace, your grace. He laughed, cruel and high. Peace? I'll have their heads. Sir Meryn, remind her... Enough. Tyrion's voice cut in, sharp as a whip. He stood at the throne's base, his mismatched eyes hard. The girl's no threat, your grace. Save your wrath for the battlefield. Joffrey flushed but waved Sir Meryn back. Sansa's knees shook, but she held her curtsy. Tyrion's gaze lingered, and she wondered what he saw, a pawn or something more. That night she dreamed of Winterfell, of snow, of dire wolves, of her family whole. She woke to the clank of guards outside, but her resolve hardened. Father lives, Robb fights, Arya's out there. She would endure, and she would escape. Tywin Lannister sat in Harrenhal's vast hall, his face a mask of stone. The castle's melted towers loomed like ghosts, a reminder of power's cost. Reports littered his table. Renly's march, Robb Stark's advance, Ned's survival. The game had shifted, and Tywin hated surprises. Eddard Stark should be dead, he said, his voice low. Sir Kevan at his side nodded grimly. Renly's move was bold, Kevan said. He's rallied the Stormlands and Tyrells. With the Starks, he's a threat. Tywin's fingers tapped the table. Renly's a boy playing king. Robb Stark's the danger, green but cunning, and Eddard's honor binds men to him even now. Sir Gregor Clegane loomed nearby, his shadow a threat. Let me ride, my lord. I'll bring you their heads. Tywin's eyes were cold. You'll do as I command, not chase glory. We hold the Riverland's heart. Let them come to us. He turned to Maester Pycelle, who'd arrived with ravens from King's Landing. What of my son? Tyrion manages the court, Pycelle rasped. Joffrey's difficult, but Cersei holds the reins. Tywin's lip curled. Cersei holds nothing but her pride. Tyrion's the only one with sense, and he's half a man. He stood, his mind ablade. Renly and Robb would meet soon, and their alliance could crush King's Landing. Stannis was a wild card, but Dragonstone was far. Tywin's plan took shape. Strike fast, divide them, bleed them dry. Send word to Sir Stafford, he told Kevin. Muster his host at Oxcross. We'll hit Robb's flank before he joins Renly. And find me sellswords, Bronn, the bloody mummers, anyone with a blade. Kevin bowed. And Ned Stark? Tywin's eyes narrowed. He lives, but he'll wish he hadn't. The parley at Bronn's Gate was a dance of steel and words. Renly's pavilion glowed with lanterns, its walls bright with silk. Robb and Ned sat across from Renly and Margaery, their lords a wary circle. Catelyn stood behind Robb, her presence a shield. Renly spoke first, his voice smooth. We share a foe, Robb, and Joffrey's a cancer, and Tywin's his blade. Join me, and we'll end them. Robb's eyes were Ned's, gray, unyielding. The North fights for itself. I'll march with you, but my crown's my own. Renly's smile tightened. Two kings make a fragile shield. The realm needs one voice. Ned spoke, his voice rough but firm. The realm needs peace, not crowns. Joffrey's a bastard, Renly. You know it, as I do. The room stilled. Loras's hand twitched toward his sword, but Margaery's touch stayed him. Renly leaned back, his eyes sharp. Bold words, Lord Stark. If true, Stannis claims the throne. Will you bend to him? Ned's jaw clenched. I'll bend to truth when the time comes. Robb cut in, his voice hard. We're here for Sansa, for Arya, for the North. Name your terms, Renly. Renly glanced at Margaery, then nodded. March with me to King's Landing. We'll free Sansa, crush Joffrey. After we'll speak of crowns. Robb looked to Ned, who gave a slight nod. Done, Robb said. But if you break faith, the North remembers. The pact was sealed with wine, but trust was thin. That night Ned and Robb walked the camp, grey wind at their heels. He's ambitious, Robb said, glancing at Renly's tents. Can we trust him? No, Ned said bluntly. But we need him. Tywin's coming, Robb. He'll strike before we reach the capital. Robb's face hardened. Let him. We'll be ready. Ned gripped his shoulder. You're a king, but you're my son. Don't carry this alone. Robb's smile was fleeting. I won't, father. Arya Stark crouched in the underbrush, her breath shallow. The Riverlands were a maze of danger. Bandits, Lannister scouts, broken men. Yoren was dead, cut down by Sir Amory Lorch's men, but Arya had escaped with Gendry, Hot Pie, and Lamy. Needle was her secret, hidden beneath her rags. They'd joined a ragtag band fleeing north, but Arya's eyes were south. Whispers of her father's survival had reached her, carried by a peddler. Father's alive. The words were a fire in her chest. She didn't know if Sansa was free or Robb safe, but Ned's life was a star to follow. Gendry squatted beside her, his hammer heavy in his hand. You're planning something, he muttered. I see it in your face. Arya's eyes glinted. I'm going to find my father. He snorted. You're mad. The roads are death. I'm not afraid, she lied. Fear was a shadow, but anger was her blade. That night she slipped away, needle at her side. The stars guided her south toward Bronzegate's rumors. She was a wolf, small but fierce, and she would run until she found her pack. At Storm's End a raven brought dark tidings. Stannis Baratheon had landed on the mainland, his small host bolstered by a strange priestess in red. Whispers spoke of shadows and fire, of a king who burned his gods. Ned read the message, his heart heavy. Stannis was moving, and with him the truth of Joffrey's birth. Renly laughed it off, but Ned saw the danger. If Stannis pressed his claim, their alliance could fracture. Stannis is no threat, Renly said, tossing the parchment aside. He's a crab in a bucket. Ned's voice was low. He's your brother, and he's right. Renly's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Margaery's smile smoothed the tension, but Ned felt the storm building. That night he stood on the ramparts, the sea a black roar below. Robb's army was near, Sansa's fate unknown, Arya a ghost. Stannis loomed, and Tywin waited. Ned's hand gripped his sword, the steel cold. I'm coming, he whispered to his children. Hold fast. The Blackwater rush churned under a bruised sky, its waters a mirror to the tension in the air. Eddard Stark stood on a rise overlooking the river, his breath misting in the autumn chill. To the east, Renly Baratheon's host glittered. Tyrell roses and Baratheon stags, knights in polished steel, and levies stretching to the horizon. To the west, Robb Stark's Northmen formed ranks, their direwolf banners snapping in the wind. Ned's heart was a knot of pride and fear. His son was a king, his allies strong, but the Game of Thrones spared no one. King's Landing loomed across the river, its walls bristling with scorpions and archers. Joffrey's golden banners mocked them from the Red Keep, a taunt to Ned's survival and Robb's rebellion. Sansa was still inside, a hostage in a den of lions. Arya remained a ghost, her fate a gnawing ache. Ned's borrowed sword hung heavy at his side, a poor substitute for ice, but it would serve. Today they marched for family, for honor, for blood. Renly approached, his green cloak swirling. "Lord Stark," he said, his smile bright but edged, "the day is ours. Tywin's host is a day's march west. Too late to save Joffrey. We'll take the city by nightfall." Ned's eyes stayed on the walls. "Tywin's no fool. He'll strike where we're weak. And Stannis..." Renly's laugh was sharp. "Stannis skulks at Storm's End, burning driftwood with his red witch. He's no threat." Ned's jaw tightened. Scouts had brought word of Stannis' landing, his small host bolstered by strange rites and whispers of shadows. The truth of Joffrey's parentage, Ned's secret now as Stannis' banner, hung like a storm cloud. If Renly fell or Robb faltered, Stannis' claim could sunder their fragile alliance. Robb joined them, grey wind at his heels. At 17 he carried himself like a man forged in war, but Ned saw the boy beneath, the son who'd wept in his arms at Bronzegate. "Father," Robb said, his voice steady, "the Blackfish reports a Lannister outriders probing our flanks. Tywin's closer than we thought." Ned nodded, his mind racing. "He'll hit us as we siege, hoping to trap us between the city and his host. We need to move fast." Renly's eyes narrowed. "The city's ours for the taking. Cersei's guards are spread thin, and Joffrey's a coward. We storm the gates, free your daughter, and end this." Robb's gaze met Ned's, a silent question. Ned spoke, his voice low. "Sansa's our priority, but a siege risks her life. We draw Joffrey out, force a battle on open ground." Renly hesitated, then nodded. "Agreed. Let's give the boy king a taste of steel." As the horn sounded, Ned mounted his horse, his resolve iron. The Blackwater would run red before the day was done, but he would see his children safe, or die trying. Sansa Stark stood at her chamber window, her fingers tracing the cold stone. The city buzzed with fear, Renly's army at the gates, Robb's wolves howling across the river. Her father lived, her brother fought, and hope was a blade she wielded in secret. Yet Joffrey's court was a cage, its bars tightening with each passing day. The king's temper had grown feral. At court he'd scream for Ned's head, Robb's heart, Renly's crown. Cersei's calm frowed, her eyes darting to shadows. Tyrion Lannister, the imp, ruled his hand, his sharp tongue a shield against Joffrey's whims. Sansa watched him, wary but curious. He'd spared her beatings twice, his gaze holding something she couldn't name, pity, perhaps, or cunning. A knock came at her door, soft but urgent. Sansa froze, her heart pounding. The maid who entered was new, her eyes downcast. "My lady," she whispered, slipping a scrap of parchment into Sansa's hand. "From a friend." Sansa waited until the maid left, then unfolded the note. "Your wolf runs free. Be ready." Her breath caught. Arya, alive as the first note had promised. She burned the parchment in her candle, her mind racing. Escape was a dream, but dreams could sharpen into plans. At midday, Joffrey summoned her to the throne room. The Iron Throne loomed, its jagged edges a cruel jest. Joffrey lounged upon it, his crown askew, his smile venomous. "Your traitor kin are at my gates," he sneered. "Shall I show you their heads when we're done?" Sansa curtsied, her voice soft as silk. "I pray for peace, your grace." He laughed, but it was brittle. "Peace? I'll have blood! Sir Meryn—" "Enough!" Tyrion snapped, stepping forward. "The girl's no threat, and you've a battle to win, your grace." Joffrey's face twisted, but he waved Sir Meryn back. Sansa's knees trembled, but she held her poise. Tyrion's eyes met hers, a flicker of warning or promise. As she left, Cersei's gaze followed, cold and calculating. That night Sansa lay awake, the city's clamor a distant roar. The note's words burned in her mind. "Be ready." She didn't know who her friend was. Varys, perhaps, or some hidden ally. But she would not waste this chance. She was a Stark, and Starks endured. Tywin Lannister rode at the head of his host, and Harrenhal's shadow at his back. The Blackwater was his battlefield now, its plains a canvas for victory. Renly's numbers were vast, Robb's wolves fierce, but Tywin was a lion, and lions hunted best in chaos. His scouts reported the allied armies massing at the river's edge, their siege lines forming. Tywin's plan was simple. Let them bleed against King's Landing's walls, then strike from the west, shattering their rear. Sir Stafford's host at Oxcross would join him, bolstered by sellswords, bronze blades, the bloody mummers at savagery. Gregor Clegane rode at his side, a blunt instrument eager for slaughter. "Renly's a peacock," Tywin said to Kevin, his voice cold. "He'll break under pressure. Robb Stark's the threat. Green, but relentless." Kevin nodded, his face grim. "And Eddard?" "His honor binds men to him." Tywin's eyes were slits. "Eddard's a dead man walking. We end him today, and the north fractures." A rider galloped up, mud-splattered. "My lord, Stannis Baratheon's host moves from Storm's End. He's 2 days south with ships and a red priestess." Tywin's jaw tightened. Stannis was a complication, his claim a spark in dry grass. "Let him come," he said. "He'll find only ashes." As they neared the Blackwater, Tywin signaled his captains. "Form ranks. We hit their flanks at dusk when they are committed to the siege. No mercy." The lion's roar was silent, but its claws were sharp. The battle began with a hail of arrows, blackening the sky above the Blackwater rush. Renly's siege towers rolled forward, their timbers groaning, while Robb's Northmen held the western flank, shields locked against the city's volleys. Ned rode with Robb, his sword drawn, his eyes on the gates. Sansa was behind those walls, and every moment risked her life. "Hold the line!" Robb shouted, Grey Wind snarling beside him. The Greyjohn's bellows echoed, Umbermen driving ladders against the walls. Renly's knights charged the mud gate, Loras Tyrell a streak of white and gold, his lance shattering shields. Ned's horse danced beneath him, sensing the chaos. "They're not sallying," he called to Robb. "Joffrey's hiding. Why?" Robb's face was grim. "Tywin, he's coming!" As if summoned, horns blared from the west. Dust rose and Lannister banners emerged, crimson and gold, a tide of steel. Tywin's host crashed into Robb's flank, Gregor Clegane's monstrous form leading the van. Men screamed, horses reared, and the Northmen's line buckled. "Wheelwright!" Robb roared, rallying his men. Grey Wind leapt, tearing into a Lannister knight, and the Umbers surged to meet Gregor's charge. Ned swung his sword, cutting down a sellsword, his blood singing with battle's clarity. He was no king, no lord, only a father fighting for his kin. Renly's horn sounded, and his knights pivoted, Loras leading a countercharge. The Tyrell's numbers held, but Tywin's precision carved through like a blade. Ned saw Robb falter, a Lannister spearman lunging. He spurred forward, his sword taking the man's head, and pulled Robb upright. "Stay sharp," Ned growled, his voice steadying his son. Robb nodded, blood on his cheek. "For Sansa." The battle raged into dusk, the Blackwater a churn of bodies and steel. Renly's siege towers burned, set alight by wildfire from the city's catapults. Green flames licked the sky, their eerie light casting shadows of death. Ned's arm ached, his breath ragged, but he fought on, Robb at his side. Then from the south a new cry rose. Black sails dotted the river, and Stannis Baratheon's fleet swept in, their prows cutting the water. Red flames danced on their decks. Not wildfire, but something darker, guided by a woman in scarlet. Stannis' men landed, their shields tight, and struck Renly's rear. "Stannis!" Renly's voice carried over the din, equal parts rage and fear. He wheeled his horse, rallying his knights, but the blow was a hammer. Ned's heart sank. Stannis' timing was a blade in their spine, splitting their focus. Tywin pressed harder, sensing weakness, and the city's gates remained shut. Sansa was beyond reach, and the alliance teetered. "Robb!" Ned said, gripping his son's arm. We can't hold!" "Fall back, regroup." Robb's eyes blazed. "Not without Sansa!" Ned's voice was iron. "We lose today. We lose her forever. Trust me." Robb hesitated, then nodded. He raised his horn, sounding the retreat. The Northmen pulled back, shields high, while Renly's host fractured, Tyrells and Baratheons clashing with Stannis' men. Ned rode with Robb, Grey Wind guarding their rear, and the Blackwater's banks became a graveyard. Inside the Red Keep, Sansa heard the battle's roar, a distant thunder shaking her bones. The city was a cauldron. Servants fled, guards shouted, and wildfire's green glow lit the night. She stood in her chamber, her hands clasped, waiting for a sign. The door burst open, and Tyrion Lannister stood there, his armor dented, his face grim. "Lady Sansa," he said, his voice urgent, "come with me. Now." She froze, fear warring with hope. "Why?" "No time," he snapped. "Your father's out there, and Joffrey's lost his mind. Move, or you're dead." Sansa followed, her heart pounding. Tyrion led her through twisting corridors, past panicked maids and drunken guards. The Red Keep was a maze, but he knew its secrets. They descended to a hidden passage, its walls damp and cold. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "Out," Tyrion said, his eyes scanning the dark. "Your brother's at the gates, but the city's a trap. I owe your father nothing, but I won't see you butchered." Sansa's breath caught. Was this her friend? She didn't trust him, but she had no choice. They emerged near the river, the Blackwater a chaos of fire and screams. A hooded figure waited, a boat bobbing behind him. "Go," Tyrion said, pushing her forward. "Don't look back." The figure was Dantos, his face flushed but sober. "My lady," he stammered, "I swore to save you." Sansa climbed into the boat, her hands shaking. As Dantos rowed, wildfire exploded above, painting the sky. She thought of her father, of Robb, of Arya. "I'm coming," she vowed. The boat slipped through the chaos, Stannis' ships a shadow to the south. Sansa's eyes stung with smoke and tears, but hope burned brighter. She was a Stark, and she was free. Arya Stark crept through the riverland's brush, her clothes rags, her face dirt-smeared. Needle was her comfort, its steel a promise. She'd heard of the Blackwater's battle. Renly, Robb, her father, all clashing with Joffrey's lions. She didn't know who'd won, but Ned's name was a beacon drawing her south. Gendry had followed her, stubborn as ever, his hammer slung across his back. "You'll get us killed," he muttered, but he stayed. Hot Pie and Lami were gone, lost to raiders, and Arya's heart was a stone, heavy but unyielding. Near a burned village she saw riders, Northmen, their direwolf banners tattered. Her breath caught. She stepped into the open, needle sheathed, and raised her hands. "I'm Arya Stark," she called, her voice fierce despite her fear. The riders halted, their leader a grizzled man with Karstark colors. "Stark," he said, squinting. "Gods, you're Ned's girl." They took her to a camp, hidden in a copse. Robb was there, his face haggard, gray wind at his side. When he saw her, he froze, then ran to her, lifting her in his arms. "Arya," he choked, "you're alive." She hugged him back, tears burning. "Where's father?" Ned emerged from a tent, his hair streaked with gray, his eyes wide. "Arya," he whispered, and she flew to him, burying her face in his chest. He smelled of leather and home, and for the first time in months she felt safe. Catelyn joined them, her sobs soft but fierce. The Starks were broken, but they were together. Almost. "Sansa," Arya said, pulling back. "Is she—" "We don't know," Ned said, his voice heavy. "The city's chaos. We retreated, but she's strong, Arya. She'll find a way." Arya nodded, her jaw tight. She'd lost too much to doubt her sister. Sansa was a wolf, too. The battle's end was no victory, only survival. Renly's host limped south, battered by Stannis' assault and Tywin's ferocity. Robb's Northmen regrouped in the Riverlands. Their losses steep, but their spirit unbroken. Ned stood with his son, Arya at his side, and planned their next move. Word came at dawn. Sansa was free, smuggled from the city by Tyrion Lannister and Ser Dantos. A scout brought her to the camp, her dress torn, her face pale but unbowed. Ned embraced her, his heart full at last. "You're safe?" he murmured, and she nodded, tears falling. The Starks were reunited, but the war was far from won. Tywin held King's Landing, Joffrey's crown intact. Stannis vanished into the night, his red priestess a whisper of dread. Renly licked his wounds. His alliance with Robb strained but unbroken. Ned gathered his children that night, the camp quiet around them. "We have bled for this," he said, his voice steady. "But we're in together, and that's our strength. The North is ours, and we'll fight for it." Robb nodded, his crown a weight he bore with pride. Tywin won't rest, neither will we. Sansa's voice was soft but firm. I saw their fear, father. They're not invincible. Arya grinned, needle gleaming. Let's hunt some lions. Ned looked at them, his wolves, scarred but fierce. The Game of Thrones was afire, burning all it touched, but the Starks endured. Jon's face flickered in his mind, far at the wall and Lyanna's secret with him. That truth would wait, but not forever. We march north, Ned said. Winterfell calls, and we'll answer. But first we carve a path. The fire crackled, and the Starks stood as one, their shadows long against the night. The realm was fractured, its crowns contested, but the North remembered, and the wolves would howl again,